and Safety Committee meeting in February.
All right, but there will be a change.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, well, that's an encouraging thing.
That's the way the system should work. I mean, Bruce outlined exactly what takes place in terms of the review that takes place. But can I say again, on all of these queries, I mean, from a group perspective, the reporting in Jetstar that we've seen, as I said, last year we had over 9,000 reports that came in. The reporting levels we do monitor, and if there was a reporting problem in any division of the company, any segments of the company, we would go in and look at that from a group perspective. From the group's perspective, the reporting in Jetstar, the reports that come in show a healthy reporting culture. They show that people are putting reports in. And I have to say again, you know, if there are any concerns with people about recriminations or activity that takes place, there are plenty of processes in place for people to not go through the Jetstar organisation if they're uncomfortable with it, to go to the regulator. And that's a great example of that document, should be sent to the regulator, for the regulator to have a look at it.
And I'm not sure if it has, but I think it may well have been.
But that's what should be happening in the process. And we're very happy to cooperate with the regulator as we do, to have a look at these issues when they arise. I have absolutely no problem in doing that, and that's the right process. And what we want to avoid is, because I have a suspicion, having looked at that, as again, I'm worried about this note that we've gotten now from the pilot, that there's a lot of misrepresentation and misinformation out there that's taken in on the basis of facts.
It was from one pilot to another pilot, and I understand this pilot was in a more senior position at that base, being quite dismissive of fatigue concerns.
Can I just, we have tabled this. Okay. I don't find this extraordinary. I mean, some people are sookier than others, you know. There was a bit of sookiness in the media there a few weeks ago, and I won't go near that again. But I'm inclined to bring out the best in sookiness in people. And I'm a sook myself and a bit of a princess when it comes to bloody crutching heavy crossbred ewes. Some blokes can do 150 a run, and if I do 75 a run, the sook comes out in me. But in fairness, I mean, back of the clock, in the last 4 weeks, this is the author of the letter. In the last 4 weeks, I've done 7 back of the clocks, 2 lots of back-to-back and 1 after JQ 117. I personally found the back-to-back the hardest, and after JQ 117, no dramas. By trial and error, I've worked out what works for me, and I can manage the shift. I can say that I hate the shift, and I hate pulling out heavy crossbred ewes. And I definitely don't operate to my normal standard. I'm tired throughout the shift. Please take note, which sends a little signal. Feel terrible, but would not call it fatigue. Now, that's a personal judgment. All I ask is that you give the back of the clock flying a go, blah, blah, blah. If you honestly believe you can't operate safely, not just because you feel terrible, then call in FUD, that is unfit for duty. I can't see how it can be taken from your personal leave, which I think is fair enough. I don't see how it can be right that if you couldn't get enough rest for whatever reason, call in FUD, get a free day off. In the meantime, I get called in off standby. So I mean, it sort of says there's a bit of human frailty in, you know, how much some people can handle and some can't. And none of this is very surprising to me. And I think it's quite an honest interchange between two pilots, you know. One bloke saying, you know, toughen up, mate, or, you know, use the rules to. So, I mean, I just sort of look at this and say, well, maybe the system is working if some people can't deal with it. And would it be fair to say that the back of the clock work out of Perth and Darwin is probably at the limit? And, you know, there's an orange light flashing.
I'd have to get the statistics and look at it, but as I said to you, I look at the averages of worked hours across all the bases, and I can't see any of them getting close to the limits at the moment.
Well, this person, who's the senior person, says the current BOC is a horror shift. But let's look at the big picture, you know, and that's about keeping the base open, etc. And if you think this is tough, go and do a bit in Darwin. Well, I guess if it was me, and you know, we're here to make sure that we look at all the issues, so I see nothing at all wrong with Senator Xenophon exploring this to the extent that it needs to be explored. But at the same time, we just need to know there's an honest system where,
Yeah.
you know...
I think it's fair, Chairman. I would say that what we do is that we, the factors are that in Perth and Darwin, the commercial operation of those services involve back-of-the-clock services. That's the way the economics and the whole operation works. Now, that's the commercial driver. The safety driver and the operational driver is how do we do that in the absolute best and most safe way. And what we are always continuously looking at is how to improve it. And Bruce, I think, gave the greatest example of how the Darwin-Singapore process, where that was continuously reviewed and the implications that it had on fatigue. And in the February Airline Safety Committee meeting, a decision was made that service would be converted into an overnight. So that continuous improvement is always there as we get more information and different information about it. And as we investigate these things, we do make changes. There's continuous thousands of changes that will take place every year in the airline's operations based on the safety reporting culture that's there, based on us analysing them, and based on us using that material. And that's why I'm encouraging everybody, any information that's there, and even this note, even if it is innocuous and that it actually signals as the right thing, should go through the proper channels.
Why do you call it misinformation, Mr Joyce? You refer to it as misinformation.
I
How's it misinformation?
No, I said there is some misinformation.
I mean, this was sent to all. This was broadcast to all the Perth-based pilots from the senior pilots.
I'm not saying. I said that this note, even this note, I'm saying, should go through the proper process and should be reviewed.
Well, so, Mr. Rossiter, were you aware of this note?
I haven't seen it before.
No.
I mean, the difficulty...
Well, sorry, Chair, can I just follow up? As Mr. Rossiter, who's an important position as Head of Safety at Jetstar, is it proposed to speak to the author of that note to...
Absolutely, we'll investigate it now. And we will go through the proper channels to make sure that it's the right... I didn't say it was misinformation. I said maybe it's an innocuous note and it actually signals that it's the right exchange that should happen. But even if it isn't,
telling pilots to toughen up princesses. What sort of culture? What sort of culture?
But if it isn't appropriate, we will take it through the proper channels, and that will not be tolerated within the company. That's what we said. But I mean, to have a note presented to us and have us to try and do a full investigation and give a response within a few minutes is not appropriate due diligence or practice. It needs to go through a proper process.
Can I just say what?
The actual letter, it's, if I was a pilot, was doing back-to-back, back-of-the-clock flights, and you were dealing with it, and as you could, as the human body can, the worry that you have in the back of the mind, I'm sure that's what a lot of the Jetstar pilots is, how long are they going to keep this up for, and they're going to keep loading us up till, we drop dead sort of thing. And I guess this is just an exchange to, I know what, if I'd have got this, what I'd have done, but I better not say it here, but anyhow.
Can I say to the committee, one of the things that is worth understanding is around the limitations of pilot hours. I mean, some pilots do like those long back of the clock sectors because you clock up your hours very quickly. I mean, you look at a Perth-Singapore return, which is what's referred to in the letter, you're talking about potentially 10 hours of flying on that sector. The pilots in a month can only do 100 hours of flying under the rules, and that means you're working 10 days. Now, none of them will be working to the limit anyway, so they're working less than 10 days. So you think about a month where you do all your work within 10 days. It's actually not a terribly bad thing, and some people actually like to get through long sectors like that, get rid of their flying patterns pretty quickly. So you may hear about stories where someone did 3 or 4 in a week, but you've got to understand within the broader context of the limitations and the average weekly and all the other things that I talked through around the other controls at work, they're still only going to be working to those hours that we talked about before.
Look, I understand that, and so we do, but I'm worried about what happens in the other 20 days of the week, and how do you know when the pilot comes back that he hasn't run 4 marathons and had 2 nights running in a pole dancing bloody nightclub or something? Like, that's the bit. You nearly need, in terms of safety, to have some sort of definition of rest requirements, or I don't know how you do it, but
I think the best way still, Senator, is coming back to this dual responsibility. If the pilot's feeling, as Peter pointed out, that he's feeling that he's unwell for duty in any way, including fatigue, then it's his responsibility to put up his hand and say he's not going to do that duty. And that is the only way that I think you can...
The most worrying thing for me, Senator Xenophon, in this letter is where he says, and this is the senior pilot, I take it, I can say that I hate the shift and I definitely don't operate to my normal standard.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a worry.
But isn't it also, thank you, Chair, isn't it also a bit of a worry, and to both Mr Joyce and Mr Buchanan, the fact that you haven't seen this letter, hasn't been brought to your attention by any of your pilots at the base in Perth, does that indicate that there is a degree of a lack of trust or concern about bringing things to you? I mean, it worries me that you haven't seen it.
But again, we don't know the reasons unless we go through as Senator and ask the pilots exactly why that was the case, and we do the proper investigation. So, and can I say, again, I come back, we have over 9,000 reports every year, so the vast majority of people in this company have absolutely no problem in reporting any incident that occurs, and we welcome it and we encourage it, and when reporting rates actually drop down, we go out there and try to communicate to get reporting rates up. We're passionate about it, and I'm very passionate about safety, and if you know, absolutely, I'd love to see these things and people raising it to us, and we want to see them, and we want them to go through the appropriate process. And can I say, what we see around the organisation is that, again, I keep on saying that the vast majority of people in the Qantas group have absolutely no problem in using the existing procedures that are there. And if some people do have a problem with using the internal company procedures, there is a process with CASA, there is a process with a whistleblower policy with PwC, so that if they don't trust me or Bruce, and that's the problem, then they have absolute mechanisms actually to overcome that. And none of those processes, I believe, have been used in this case because we haven't heard about it.
Sure, I no doubt we'll hear from you about that. I just want to go to the issue of the CASA audit, and maybe Mr Rossiter can assist us on this. Jetstar, out of the Darwin Singapore flights, operates to an exemption to CAO Order 48, which relates to flight and duty time limitations. Mr Rossiter, you at the time, on the 18th of September 2009, you were the manager of CASA operations, Air Transport Southern Region, correct?
That's correct.
And you signed off on this exemption?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. And you commenced work with Jetstar in, what was it, December? Can you just...
December the 15th.
And just for the record, because it was raised by previous senators, and I think I know the answer, but I think to be fair to you, at what stage did you apply for a job with Jetstar?
I didn't in fact have a conversation with Jetstar until about any potential of even entering into a process until after the time of signing of that exemption.
Right. And when that was in October sometime?
The exemption, it was about...
the exemption was the 18th of September?
Yeah, 18th of September. It was about 3 weeks after that I first had a dialogue with Bruce about it.
Can I say a few things on this one?
Yeah, but you understand why I'm raising it, because it was raised by some of my colleagues, and I'm quite satisfied with that answer, but I think it's important to put that on the record.
But just to give a bit of context around the CO 48 exemption, because that's a document that was renewed for the 5th time by Mark. It's a document that exists for almost all airlines in the world. It's a pretty standard process it goes through, and it's really to deal with the flight time duty limitations that were derived back, I don't know, 50 years ago, and weren't really thought through.
That's not quite right, though, is it? Because there's a difference between international operations and those short-haul international operations. That's been one of the challenges to CAO 48.
I'm talking about the original ones, and that's why you have CO 48 exemption, which exists now, which is trying to deal with modern jet operations, RPT services, and the
shorter haul international.
A combination of both, yeah.
Sure. Okay, no, I accept that.
Can I make another comment? I suppose it's a general point that should be made. You know, the interchange between CASA and the airlines has taken place for some time, because I think there's sort of an impression that maybe some impropriety in having people change between the two organisations, and we feel that it's actually really good for safety and the improvement of the safety practices in this country to have that interchange, because people that come from the regulator into the airline give a different different dimension, give a different perspective, and actually improve the safety within the airline community, and vice versa. I think for CASA, we talked about the CASA resources and the CASA's need to build up resources going forward. The prime source of those resources will come from the aviation industry, and I think